introduce myself very briefly. This is Antonella Poce. I'm part of the management board of Eden, Digital Learning Europe. And today we are opening the OE Week, the Open Education Week. And we are so glad to have such an important and relevant participation from our community. Thank you so much, everyone, for being with us. And the topic today is the future of AI in formal and informal education contexts, inclusion, ethics, and new perspectives. We are so glad and we are so honored to have with us such a, amazing panel. Together with us, Deborah Sid Awes, Emily K. Janatowski, Maria Rosaria Re, David Guralnik, and Carlo De Medio. As I was saying, this is Antonella Poce, I'm part of the management board. I teach experimental pedagogy, technology in education, museum education at the University of Roma Tor Vergata, where I am full professor. But I don't want to steal time to our guests. Today, we're going to discuss the potential role and impact of artificial intelligence in both formal and informal education contexts, trying to highlight the ethical implications and possibilities in terms of promoting social and cultural inclusion of different categories of learners, such as those with protected characteristics, such as disability. Our experts will present case studies, research experiences, practices implemented in different educational institutions. Really, I'm thankful to them for being with us today. And we have about 10 minutes each, and then we leave some time for questions in the end. So please take notes and send us your questions in the section devoted to questions and answers, and also in the chat, or raising your hand. We'll see how to involve you. So Deborah, thank you for being with us. A little introduction. Deborah always produces innovative learning experiences, online exhibitions and resources, digital publications, websites, and virtual study centers for art museums and other educational institutions. As president of our studio, she guides nonprofit organizations in the planning and execution of digital learning products, as well as facilitates institutional transformations along with EACEA's team of media and learning professionals. Since 2023, AWES has been researching how cultural institutions might collaborate on improving educational experiments using generative artificial intelligence systems. The floor is yours, Deb. You have 10 minutes. I'll give you a sign when 2 minutes are left.
Okay. Antonella, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. I just want to clarify that I'm coming to you today not as an AI scientist. I am an optimistic educator, and I see critical opportunities for using artificially intelligent systems to overcome pretty tremendous challenges that face not just education, but also the cultural sector. This slide is just a kind of mind map, literally, of my mind. My point of view. I just wanted to say that a lot of my thoughts and observations are coming from the fact that I've worked for several decades as both a museum educator and as a digital innovator. And the result of that work has shown me how compelling it can be for culture to be brought to people's homes, to classrooms everywhere. It's a transformative experience. And that's my lens in looking at what the potential for AI in education is and can be. Today, I'm just going to highlight 3 ways that I feel are pretty likely to have a strong impact on the future of education. And obviously there are many more than 3 ways. However, I think that these 3 ways are already out of the gate, and they relate to both education and cultural heritage institutions. I'm not sure how many cultural heritage professionals there are out there, but maybe this will help you speak to your local one about some synergy that you see happening. At least that's my wish. So the first thing I want to talk about is lifestyle learning. And as a museum educator, I think a lot about lifestyle learning. That essentially means learning by accident. Traditionally, museum visitors, they really don't know what they want to see or learn, but they know that museums are highly trusted sources of information, and they expect to have a nice experience, interesting. Maybe they will learn, but it's really more about the experience that draws them to come. Thinking outside of that box for a second, today, when we don't know where we want to go or what we want to learn, increasingly we use digital guides. You might ask your smart speaker to find the right movie to stream, or you might consult a GPS system when you're traveling in an unfamiliar place. What if these digital guides could also learn more about you as a person? Like maybe they've read your Netflix watch list, or maybe they remember your travel itineraries from a past vacation. As a human guide, which I did do in museums for many years, I could lead you on an awesome museum tour if I also knew what documentaries you loved, or the nature flicks you watch, or the mysteries that you go back to. It really could improve my creating an experience for you. And it's with that sort of thinking that I imagine how machine learning tools like digital assistants will be able to analyze and associate activity data that you knowingly share. I'm not talking here about surreptitiously finding all these things about you. It's about, here, Siri, look at my Netflix list and see what I might like to do here. I mean, maybe that's a little too simple, but that's sort of the level I'm talking about. But museums could collaborate with these digital assistant makers in order to customize not just the museum gallery experience, which would be great in and of itself, but also bring museum learning to any relevant situation. Are you visiting Korea's National Museum of History in Seoul today? Your personal digital assistant can offer relevant information in your preferred language, brought from other museums all around the world to help you better understand what's in front of you. The same would be true if you're visiting a historic site, maybe through augmented reality. You might even see the museum objects placed in a landscape through which you are traveling. Or you could watch videos of an artistic process, or hear how popular Korean music transforms through time. These kinds of digitally fueled and personalized learning activities, they're actually available right now all around the world. What's missing are the artificially intelligent systems to make finding this kind of lifestyle learning augmentation seamless and ubiquitous. What classroom teaching the history of Korea would not welcome such a virtual museum experience of history and culture? Everyone would want that. The problem is the teachers don't know where to find them or if they exist. And that is a big problem. Here's where I see AI really having a huge, huge help for us to make those connections happen. A second point has to do with independent learning. This discovery challenge that we just talked about, it connects to this topic. Independent learners, like teachers who are driven by a need to know, figure prominently in museum education practices. They also spend a good deal of time searching the web. Web searching is one of the most hotly contested issues in AI development right now. It's fueled by the fact that much revenue is generated online today by attracting web searchers' attention. Among other outcomes, AI-powered tools like ChatGPT may impact that revenue stream. So maybe you've heard the phrase large learning models, or LLMs. That's the most prominent kind of AI that we talk about right now, because ChatGPT is a kind of LLM, and many of the other kinds of tools that people are using, DALL-E, also come from that machine learning sector. They are trained to remember a vast universe of data that is the internet. And that's an impossible task for a human, but not for the machine learning models. The downside is that LLMs cannot actually think. They have to create information structures, mostly known as knowledge graphs, to literally map out all of the relationships they discovered during their training. So just for an example, and that's kind of where the slide is going here, millions of humans all over the world speaking hundreds of languages rely on Wikipedia to learn. So do LLMs. However, LLMs especially appreciate the underlying data structure of Wikipedia, which you may not be familiar with. It's called Wikidata. Wikidata provides the same content as the Wikipedia article, but it's broken down in a contextual way, which is what it's sort of shown on the slide here. A Wikidata knowledge graph can be visualized as a set of network points. And the yellow circle you see in the slide is actually highlighting one object from a collection, from one museum collection, which is the dress worn by US President's wife, Mary Lincoln. And that dress is in the museum's collection. If you see it just on the museum's webpage, it might just contain the information that you see in blue. That's all coming from the Smithsonian Museum of American Art, whose object it is. If that object is placed in Wikipedia, you see that instantly it has all these very dynamic connections with a lot of other information having to do with the dressmaker, with the time period, with the style of the dress, with the fabric of the dress, where it was manufactured. All of this interesting stuff is very well organized and contained within a Wikimedia, within the Wikidata data structure. Okay, so we got to go quickly. I'm just going to go here to talk about the next category, which is sort of the classroom learning. That's our formal learning technique. Here's just one insight from the US situation of why we have a tremendous opportunity and maybe a challenge for changing the way we teach in a classroom setting. We discovered from COVID, the pandemic, that many students who are different kinds of learners for various reasons, they actually do well by learning at their own pace, which the COVID pandemic sort of provided them by accident. But most classrooms can't accommodate that kind of learning, and most public school budgets don't accommodate increasing tutors or other kinds of assistance. This is not lost on education vendors. They are now developing AI-powered tools. And the one on the screen is featured from a site you might know, Khan Academy, which has been for over a decade working very hard to be a free source of tutorial type information for mostly K-12 learning. They have created an AI chatbot, and they have many options. I just chose Galileo. And I met Galileo, and in talking with him, it reminded me very much of speaking with a historical reenactment. You know, one of the people that when you go to a historic site are dressed in costume, and they speak in the manner of the people who are there, but they can also help you find the bathroom. So it's sort of like a chatbot that lives in sort of two historical periods, today and yesterday, trying to give you a sense of the time. Listen, the ChatGPT ideas are still, they're bias ridden, they're still in their hallucinogenic infancy. But the fact is, they have another kind of power, which we're going to get into. I mean, cultural institutions can certainly help with their fact retrieval and validation, but they also have this amazing ability to teach critical thinking. And this is, I think, where we really want to get to with AI, because we're not going to be able to eliminate AI from our classrooms, but we have to improve why and how these tools are used. And by raising the critical thinking,
We have to hand, but you are perfectly right, and I really agree with you related to regarding the fact that we need to support critical thinking, and AI can really play an important role with that. If you want to conclude,
oh no, that's fine. These are the 5 things I tell people when I'm working with clients or museums or whatever, is to focus on communicate how you know something. That's the critical thinking piece. You can strategically spread knowledge, like using Wikipedia rather than your own website. It gets farther, faster, better. And you can partner with AI learning tools and makers, because museums and teachers, we just can't do it all. We have to work with others to get this done. And last but not least, listen to teachers. They know what they need, and they may not have the digital language to express that, but you can help them with that.
This is true. This is absolutely true. We need to start this kind of conversation. Thank you so much, Deb. I would really spend hours listening, always listening to you. Thank you so much for being with us, and we'll come back with questions. I've seen there's already one question for you, and we'll check that out in the end. Thank you. So I'm going to introduce very briefly our next panelist. Thank you for being with us, Emily Kate Ganakowski. Emily is a doctoral candidate at the University of Vienna, where she founded and taught the master's course Artificial Intelligence and Large Language Models in Humanities Research. Emily is the former North American coordinator of Google Arts and Culture, and is currently working to bring courses from the University of Vienna onto the EU-wide hosting platform, the Raya Campus. I really thank Emily. Of course, we don't have the time to read her whole biography. She's so young, but she has an incredible bio. And so I'm always impressed with that. Thank you so much for being with us, and I'll leave the floor to you. It's 3:48, so you have 10 minutes as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. So I'll jump right in due to time constraints. So I, as you sort of have heard, specialize more in teaching students about how to utilize AI. So the lens that I am sort of taking for today's talk is the concept of adaptation, how we need to constantly teach adaptability to keep up with AI innovation. So we could pop to the next slide. I'll do some on my computer as well. Thank you. So the angle, just to give you some framing that I will be speaking from, is from the side of formal education and postgraduate education, and focusing again on adaptability. So we can go to the next slide. I want to make sure we have time to get to all the juicy parts. Okay, so as you heard, I founded, developed, and taught a course this past semester in artificial intelligence, and specifically taught prompt engineering. We covered text-to-text, text-to-image, and text-to-video interfaces. And it covered foundations of AI, types of interfaces, engineering methodologies, real-world applications, and very importantly, ethical, legal, and societal issues surrounding AI's development and implementation. So we could pop to the next slide. Thank you so much. So just to give you an idea of how quickly things were developing, as many of you know who maybe work within academic institutions, you have to type up your syllabus, you have to hand it into the administration before you can teach anything. And I actually did that in the summer of 2023. And by the fall of 2023, when the winter semester began, it was it was almost completely obsolete. And I found that to be a very impactful motivator to keeping things fresh, to consistently redesigning the course and making sure that that it was always sort of relevant, and that the students were really able to get the most out of it. And actually, so this course was a Monday at 9 a.m. course. So those of you who teach know that that's kind of a tough crowd. And so I found myself really spending all weekend sort of synthesizing all of the things that have happened during the week in order to best adapt each day's classes to what has happened most recently. So if you'll go to the next slide. Thank you so much. So this is really where I get into the mindset shift and this concept of adaptation. So first off, the mindset shift, as I spoke about from my perspective as the instructor, is the idea of having constant adaptations. When you're working with AI, either allowing students to use it or encouraging patrons, if you work in a cultural institution, or if you're teaching AI itself, there's this constant adaptation where you have to always stay on top of things as they change and as things sort of as the lens changes, as the technology changes. And that's a very different mindset to being able to sort of have a syllabus that's set in stone, have the readings that you're going to be able to teach from and the assignments you're going to teach from, and then being able to sort of set it and forget it and really focus on the interactions with the students. You sort of have this extra level of needing to stay up to date with, you know, during the course, we had Sam Altman left, OpenAI for a bit. We had lawsuits coming in that changed how they were able to gather data. I mean, there were so many things that were constantly happening, as well as new tools and products coming out. So you have this shift on the instructor side, but you also have this great shift from the student side, which I think can benefit a very specific type of learner, which I think is wonderful because it's a type of learner that may not have found their place in academia in the past. It's somebody who's really going to have to be comfortable in a dynamic landscape with changing tools, with changing expectations. And I think that can also present an uncomfortable shift for students who are quite used to being able to say, I read XYZ book cover to cover, I scored this on this test, and the information is not going to change. We're really shifting away from that. And in order to shift away from that for both the instructor and the student, I believe that it's very important to teach more about how the AI functions and how to critique it very thoughtfully and deal with it very thoughtfully, rather than just how to best use a product. Because as we saw before, you can have a product in the summer and by fall, it's completely obsolete. So we'll shift to the next slide, please. Thank you. So there were some methods that we came up with in order to, as a group, sort of get through this mindset shift. We had weekly discussions. Every single course, every single class began with a discussion of the news of the week in AI, how that impacted what we were studying, how that impacted how the students are using AI. Personalization, the students were able to really have this space to adapt and personalize the assignments, the readings, the viewings to their preferred interfaces and their interests. We really embraced flaws. Right now, we're at a stage of this very, very dynamic development within AI. So there is absolutely nothing wrong with embracing the flaws, following through, giving feedback to the interfaces that you are using and following that through, and seeing what the improvements are. And we really leaned into guest lectures as well as field trips. We visited neuroscience labs and tried brain-computer interfaces. So this idea of having a very open communication, having increased flexibility, being engaging during class time and never sort of shutting down the students based on some product that they're using or how they're using it. And then this aspect of professional immersion. So we'll pop to the next slide just in the interest of time. There were also some complexities. I'm using a very nice word for that, but the concept of expectations. Students, especially students within the Austrian school system, are very used to having very clear, very sort of immobile deliverables, readings, discussions, grading schema, and that being something that was constantly in flux was definitely something that is a complexity very unique to a course about AI. Then we have the concept of group work. And since this sort of adaptability was so core to the way in which, the course went, we had to have people who had very different interests and very different concepts of how they wanted to use AI and what they wanted to use it for work together. And then we also have real world applications, which is the concept of how complex it is to be in a course where you are teaching students about AI, you are teaching them how to effectively use AI, but you still need to temper their use of AI within the rest of their university work based on university policy and current university policy. So this was a very sort of interesting thing. So we'll pop to the last slide now with our key takeaways. So from my experience over the last 6 months or so teaching about AI and teaching how to use AI in the university environment, I would say try to teach adaptation rather than teaching a particular product. Try to, as much as you can, understand how AI works rather than how a particular product functions from a user perspective. Keeping up with AI news and innovation and testing new products is always key. Always give space and provide inspiration for ethical and responsible application of AI into other work. As the previous speaker brought up, it cannot be just blanket applied to all work. It has to be very carefully and thoughtfully encouraged. And perfect, we're right on time. Promoting healthy criticism and questioning of AI products development, dissemination, and regulation is a really important component to being an ethical user of AI. So if you are using AI, it's very important to encourage those who do use it to pay very close attention to its regulations, to its dissemination, and to the development that is currently happening right now. I think it's very rare for people to be embracing and using a product as the previous presenter also said, which is essentially in its infancy still. So there are certain things that we need to take into account so that we can use it ethically while still actually embracing it and employing it right now. Definitely encouraging anybody who works with students or who works with AI themselves, allow the grace to fail forward, as we say, and don't be worried, I think, about limitations of a product that's still in development. There are so many things that in the beginning of the course, we would have conversations about how something didn't work and it was faulty. And by the end of the course, all of those bugs were worked out. So absolutely, and I know that I'm running out of time, but I do think that there are wonderful ways to incorporate AI into your work and to teach AI as well. And I think that the main key that I would suggest that people try to keep in mind is that we are not right now going to learn AI and know it, and it's not a sort of immobile thing that we can conquer. However, we can have the tools and the skills and the ability to adapt with it. So I hope that is what you take from this presentation. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was really inspiring. We have already questions. So thank you. Thank you, Emily. Let me introduce the next speaker, Maria Rosaria Re. She should be there, actually.
Yes. Good morning, everyone.
Thank you for being with us. Maria Rosaria is a full-time researcher in experimental pedagogy at the Department of History, Heritage, Education and Society, University of Roma Tor Vergata, where she teaches evaluation in digital learning context. In 2020, she obtained a joint PhD in cultural education and communication from the University of Roma Tre and the University of Foggia on the enhancement of critical thinking skills in museum users. Her expertise concerns research education methodologies within formal and informal professional training contexts. Dr. Ray's most recent interests have been focused on the design of dual learning experiences, promoting soft skills and well-being for professional development through innovative digital technologies. She has been a member of the Center for Museum Studies, University Roma Tre, since 2015 and Eden Fellow, European Distance and Learning Network since 2020, and a member of the scientific board of the Intellect Center, Research Center, Joint Research Center now, the University of Roma Tor Vergata and University of Modena Reggio Emilia, Research Center for Heritage Education, Wellbeing and Teaching Technology. Since 2021. Thank you for being with us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for this lovely presentation. Thank you for the exposure.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I'm so glad also to be with the other speakers for today's presentation. I have a lot of notes from Deborah and also Emily presentation, so hope to see at the same level of my presenters. Today's introduction will be on the use of artificial intelligence and with a focus on humanoid robots for heritage education. So how can be promoted in heritage education context? What are the most important questions that arises our research activities and we hope the future perspective in this sense. We have to underline that research in the field of heritage education, but in general of education, as already told, underlines that the use of humanoid robots through the artificial intelligence can be very useful from a learning perspective, of course, via artificial intelligence and also via ChatGPT. Humanoid robots can facilitate educational activities in formal contexts, and because they can help students learning languages, for example, mathematics, economics, and so on and so forth, in a playful and in an interactive way. So humanoid robots as an educational technology have the possibility and the ability to engage and interact with humans in a sort of more natural or intuitive way than other technologies that lack, for example, the physicality or human characteristics can't. As a physical, obviously, and also human like technologies, humanoid robots can be used to support learning in a physical space. And we know for sure, especially in museum education context, in heritage education context, the importance of physicality and spaces and the sociality is so much important. Humanoid robots, in fact, have also the chance, the possibility to being perceived by learners as a social entities. And these can support the establishment of emotional connections with learners, and also obviously can foster the motivation that is so much important from a learning perspective. So all these features that have already been studied in a formal educational settings can be taken into consideration to promote, to think, and to realize new research activities within different informal educational contexts like heritage sites and museums. But for sure, artificial intelligence, robots, and chatbots, and all these features, all these technologies have obviously have been incorporated in the museum so far, from visitors' experience to the realization of museum experience behind the scenes. So technology and artificial intelligence, as Deborah underlined before, can come in many forms in museum settings. I choose two examples that used in a different way robots and artificial intelligence for within a museum educational context. The first one is in the right corner and is Benetson. And he is a humanoid robot that was used in 2016 within the Paris Musée du Quai Branly, and is a sort of robotic art critic that quietly wandered the museum's halls, donning this bowler hat, coat and scarf, and was created by an anthropologist and a robotics engineer, and used specifically artificial intelligence to record people's users' reactions of works of art and develop its own taste. So artificial intelligence in this case was not used to create an engagement with visitors, but with the questions, with the idea of promoting aesthetic preference in robots. Another example is probably the most famous one is Pepper, the humanoid robot that was introduced in 3 different museums of the Smithsonian with the purposes of answering visitors' questions, telling stories, and using voices, gestures, and also an interactive touch screen. And the evaluation feedback of regarding the interaction between visitors and Peppers are very good. In particular, visitors love to interact with Pepper, and also according to the New York Times, the booths will even pose for selfies. So the Smithsonian plans to introduce more Peppers probably to other museums locations. So the use of humanoid robots for educational purposes has already done, but what's not so much evaluated, studied from a pedagogical perspective, so from a pedagogical point of view. And our idea with the project that I want to briefly introduce to you today is to think about how to use artificial intelligence within humanoid robots for museum and heritage educational purposes, taking into consideration that we have not so much more, but we have some results in this direction. And for example, specific research from the Osaka Museum in Japan underlines that the interaction between museum visitors and humanoid robots low level, carry out a low level of anxiety in the users, in the museum users that interacting with robots. So it will be a very good point in terms of promotion of well-being in museum
2 minutes to go.
experiences. Thank you so much. And the using of artificial intelligence for accessibility is one of the great challenges that museums and heritage sites can think about. Accessibility, but specifically personalization of learning experiences within the museum context is in general a very complicated activity from a learning perspective. Is complicated at all for sure, but in museums context more than other informal contexts because of the variety of the users and the fact that is most of the time a one-shot experience. So the idea of using artificial intelligence for developing accessibility in terms of individualization, personalization of learning experiences is the fil rouge that we want to promote with our artistic projects that today I want briefly to introduce to you, and hopefully we will talk about it in other hidden occasion. The artistic project is a project promoted by a partnership that want to realize and validate innovative technological solutions for heritage digitalization system, for sure, for educational robotics, humanoid robots, artificial intelligence, and virtual reality, in order to promote the cultural heritage of a specific part of Italy, that is the Liguria region. And obviously it's valorization, experimentation. The target group that we want to reach is students, or in general users that are not so used to heritage educational experiences in general, in particular people with ASD. And we choose a specific methodology for this specific target group, that is object-based learning. Object-based learning is widely used within museum educational activities, but the real one, the handle one, we want through robotics and artificial intelligence use the digital object-based learning. So using the importance of the object-based learning methodology.
Sorry to interrupt you, but we need to.
Yes, yeah. To define new activities. So these are the main activities of our project, and the main team that I already presented to you also hope to present the future results of the project very soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being with us. I see there are already questions also for you. So we are going to devote some time to questions. It's important to have an interaction all together. So the next panelist with us, again, we go back to the States with David Goralnik. David envisions a new approach to education. I cannot see him, but I think.
Yeah, I'm here. I should be on screen. Everyone
Yes.
should hopefully see me. Okay.
So David envisions a new approach to education and workplace learning that integrates innovative uses of technology and artificial intelligence. Among other roles, David is CEO of Kaleidoscope Learning, full adjunct professor at Columbia University, founder and chair of the Learning Ideas Conference, and the author of the book, How Organizations Can Make the Most of Online Learning. So, he is one of the best speakers we could have within this panel. Thank you for being with us, and the floor is yours. Is 4:14.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Antonella, for that wonderful introduction. And thanks to everyone for taking the time to be here, and of course it's a wonderful group and just such a great panel to be on with all these other panelists. I'm going to focus a little bit on learning experiences in the time that I have. So my own background, just to give you a little bit more, my view of learning experience design using technology is very holistic. So I like to draw on work from different fields: education, cognitive science, computer science, motivational theory, practical areas, including writing and video. Sometimes there are Hollywood elements to some of the things that we do. Sometimes that's, more than budgets allow. But I live in New York, where we have lots of great actors, so we can do some really, really cool things with incredibly talented people. It's really something. My own background, as Antonella mentioned, includes work in corporate learning, professional development, and higher education. So my company works primarily with organizations, a lot of corporate learning and development and professional development for people in different areas, legal education, all sorts of things. And I also teach at Columbia University, where I teach online learning design, primarily aimed at people looking at working in the workplace. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, part of my computer science background is in AI itself, and that was actually a lot of what I did as a PhD student, trying to apply AI to education. And that was a number of years ago, when it wasn't wasn't really a cool thing to do for a while. And then again, it has become a cool thing to do. So I get to talk about it again, which is really, really nice. Going through what they call AI winter for so long. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and give a couple of demos of what a world might look like. So the next thing I'm going to do is show a demo of a potential future learning experience. Okay, so what I like to think about is how we can best use AI and new technologies, VR, AR, holograms, robots, sensors, and more, to reimagine what learning experiences can be. So not just take new technology and implement the same pedagogical models that we have, a lot of which evolved for reasons that were practical. Okay, like how we could best teach 400 people when we have one person who's the professor. But with technology, we can reach a large-scale audience in different ways. So a lot of what I want to talk about is what we can do. So here's a potential future learning experience that's, a little bit in the future, but some parts of this, a lot of parts of this are really not out of the realm of possibility at the moment. So this is a student who's interested in learning about ancient Greece in this example. And he's in his room, and he's staring at the walls, thinking about learning about ancient Greece. And he could decide to project something on his wall in this imaginary future world. And all of a sudden, he's immersed in an ancient Greece world. Well, how about that? And he may ask a question: is that the Acropolis? He could do this by text or by voice. And he has in this world an AI coach who's there to help him. So he is not simply speaking out loud with no one around, although I wouldn't blame him if he did. But he's asking, and here's an AI coach who says, yes, it is. And there were actually a number of buildings known as an Acropolis. She tells him a little bit about what that means and points out that this is, the famous one, and he recognized that. So good job. And he may ask, did the Acropolis always look the same over the years? And the coach says, well, we don't know that much about the architectural appearance before the Archaic era. Talks a little bit about that. Talks about when Pisistratus built an entry gate. Okay, interesting. And let's take a look. So she can actually guide what he looks at as part of this experience. And so he wonders, well, who is Pisistratus? You just mentioned somebody that I hadn't talked about. Let's talk about that. So she'll give a little bit of information about who that was. He was the son of Hippocrates. So this conversation can continue in different ways, partly guided by the coach, partly driven by the student, however they might want to go. He may make comments, not everything you say is directly about, a fact about ancient Greece. It's much bigger than I imagined. It's a perfectly interesting and relevant comment. He might also leave the virtual world and visit Greece today, and do this in a way where he has the coach with him, and also might have access to other students. So there might be, an updated version of some of the headsets that we have now, where you're able to communicate with others, and we can have lots of discussions in more time about what feels right and what doesn't feel right, and how we want to best use technology. But there are a lot of interesting things you can do. So this could be a collaborative view of the world, leveraging some of the things that he's learned, leveraging the AI coach, leveraging his classmates, some of whom might be able to be there, some of whom might not be able to be there. All of that could be possible. So let's talk about some key elements of this experience. This is experiential learning. You really learn by doing something realistic. It wasn't exactly doing a job or playing a role. It was coaching guidance, feedback from a coach, and potentially from peers in that last bit. And learner control, but the learner is assisted and advised, right? So expertise is absolutely valued. And this is, I think, a point we always kind of talk a little bit about. We want to move away from the sage on the stage model, right? Like where it's all the professor filling your head with knowledge, right? Learners are a part of the learning experience, in my view, any good learning experience. But they're also coming at this as new people. Their expertise is incredibly valuable. The expertise of a professor, of an expert, is incredibly valuable. It's not a world where people just go find what they want. They don't even know what they don't know. They don't even know things they might be interested in. And so finding that balance is a lot of what we're trying to do. And so learning here is very learning focused. It's not solely instructional, but expertise is valued. So it's an immersive, very personalized experience. And we could also have added more learning by doing. Okay. Same person might have a part-time job in retail in this world. And he might be in a training room, but the training room looks like this. You project a retail world. And I'm just going to show you a couple of screens in the interest of time here. He may see a customer in this imaginary world, and he may well go up to her and say, hey, hello, can I help you find something? She's clearly looking. And the coach says, well, make sure you smile and look friendly, because she knows from the sensors that I have on as the student that maybe he's not doing that as well as he could. So let's go back. He asks again, she has this in a size, if he has this in a size small. He says, I'm sure we do, let me check. And then we just jump to the end where the AI coach gives a little summary. And I have some kind of mixed feelings about how much numerical evaluation we always want to give. There's a little bit too much of a focus, I think, on numbers. Here, I think it works probably pretty well to have numbers in the right, in the realistic kinds of skills that he needs to have and kinds of areas that he has to be good at. But we can get a lot more nuance as well. So that's a quick demo. Key elements of the experience, again, it's experiential, learn by doing, which in this case would result in skill transfer to the job. You're really learning to do the job in a very realistic way. Coaching, guidance, and feedback. Feedback comes from the AI coach. It comes from the customer's reactions, comes potentially from peers who might be part of this, depending on how we want to design the experience. I did not do that here, but it could. And we have a realistic performance-based assessment and evaluation, right? So you want to do a job, we want to evaluate you in your training about how well you're really doing the job. And this particular area suits that kind of thing very, very well, because you can practice in a safe environment without, without alienating real customers if you don't do a good job. And so it's the kind of thing where you really need to be good at it before you do it for real. And that's why this was kind of the right fit, I think. And again, learner control, but assistance and advice. So a lot of things here. Again, it's immersive and personalized, and I know I have just a couple more minutes. So I want to talk a little bit in these last couple minutes about AI's role in this experience. We had the coach interacting with the learner. We also have, I think, behind the scenes in this model, a lot of tracking learner performance in detail. Okay, perfect. We have a lot of tracking the learner performance in detail and being able to provide a nuanced analysis of how the learner is doing in either case, and also learning about what the learner is like. What are my interests? What are my skills? What are my strengths and weaknesses? There's a little bit, you get into this, you get a little bit of danger about how much data they're collecting, and that's probably a separate conversation. I know I've had conversations about that as well. From the pure learning experience perspective, ideally what you're getting is a coaching component that really gets to know you and also can provide things. Hey, maybe you're interested in this other thing that you didn't know about. Okay, so the same thing here with learner preferences, different content they might be interested in, how they choose to interact. The learner could jump in and find a customer or sit back and wait for the coach to tell them a lot of different things. The big point here is that we're scaling up. A lot of the principles behind this are progressive learning theory. It's been around for years. But you can't do it in a classroom because you can't afford to do it in a classroom. You can't do it in a lecture hall because it's impractical to do it in a lecture hall. I have 30 students in my Columbia class, and that's the maximum. I have them do individual projects. They're going to give presentations and write proposals that are due next week. And you know what? I have another job too. I'm only teaching this one class. That's going to take a full 40-hour week just to do that, and a full 40-hour week the next week. And I'll do the other job, my real job, in the other 40 hours somehow. And that's the max I have. A couple of key themes to take away. So what we can do here is reach a broad audience, reach a gigantic audience, and with these progressive learning theories being put into practice. We can create learning experiences that are respectful, individualized, warm, personal, put people in positions to learn to explore, make decisions, and think critically, a lot of the things we've heard before. And we value the experience and the expertise of people, but we're moving away from the sage on the stage model. So we're creating experiences for a diverse audience that are very personalized and are accessible to anybody, anywhere. We build it once, it could go anywhere. And that's, I think, really what we're going to get out of AI. Okay, couple last things. ideally to me, machines do what they're best at, people do what they're best at. Generative AI blurs that a little bit, but let's see what the future will hold, right? How much is creativity and how much it isn't it? We can use AI to create more humanizing experiences if we design the right types of experiences and don't focus too much on machines taking over, but machines helping people learn. Again, individualized, engaging, relevant, meaningful, respectful, and scalable. And so I look at AI as a way to help us reimagine what education can be in a way that's inclusive and prepares people for the world that we live in. And that pretty much wraps it up. I have a quote from Isaac Asimov that I like to show as the last piece from 1983, where he predicted the world of 2019. And his view is this is what education could be like, right? Education could be revolutionized by the computer. We'd have opportunities. Education wouldn't feel like a chore because it would bubble up from within. We're born naturally wanting to learn. We're fascinated by the world around us. And sometimes the necessities of a school environment, especially for certain groups of people, push that away a little bit. And here we have an opportunity to create learning experiences that further that rather than the opposite. So that's my time and hopefully not too far over. Thank you so much. I know we're going to do questions after
Thank you,
the next
David.
one.
Perfectly on time, and we'll have time for questions. Thank you for being with us. So next, last but not least, Carlo De Medio with again research fellow at the Department of Education Sciences, University of Roma Tre. He has been cooperating with the Center for Museum Studies since 2019 and has taken part in national and European research projects in the field of museum education, development of transversal skills, transversal and digital skills, promotion and evaluation of critical thinking, innovation in teaching methodologies. He is also part of the steering committee of the Eden NAP, Network of Academics and Professionals, and he contributes, I can say, constantly to the development of Eden digital learning. So I thank him for being with us. He has also a PhD in computer science, so he is again a natural consequence and part of this panel. So Carlo, the floor is yours. You have 10 minutes from now for 26.
Thank you. I hope you will see my screen right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, everyone. I'm Carlo De Medio, and today I will speak about AI and education, and specifically, I will give you an introduction to the use of AI in education, and after that, I will present you a specific case of application, and I will say why I chose this case. First of all, I will start from this question. How can artificial intelligence help in education? For sure, we read a lot in the last year, but I chose these 4 points, starting from the first, the monitoring of vital parameters and the handwriting analysis can be a predictor of a lot of specific learning disorders, for examples, and using tablet, using smart devices, the AI can collect all those data and can make those diagnoses automatically. So if we can develop a model, a framework for the school to get this data, it's possible to really increase the possibility to cure, to have a treatment for the students in the first years of their school path. After that, for sure, the AI is an instrument that can support some methodology. For example, object-based learning and digital storytelling are widely used for creating experience related to cultural heritage, but in the learning experience in general. The digital storytelling in many research is a way to go over the cultural barrier, to be inclusive inside museum and over the museum barriers. We can say that using the digital storytelling, we can create a shared memory that can create a community. And this is how this instrument can go over the inclusion. For another example is the object-based learning in the field of the medical field. Many research highlighted how the object-based learning can be used with students with a child with the autism spectrum, and those methodology can be supported by the IE, for example, collecting data and give them a recommendation, give them individualization and personalization inside this learning path. And this is highlighted in the third point of this slide. The artificial intelligence can insert an element of personalization and individualization. So every experience must be developed with the person at the center. The problem is that we have to identify how to create the model of the person. There are different models for different needs, but the real problem is that when we try to insert the IE inside the school, inside the museum, there are a lot of problems, because you can read the newspaper and say the IE can go on and say okay to a nuclear bomb. Yeah, they in the research academy of if I'm not wrong at the MIT, they try to explain that the IE cannot go over this argument, but people are not ready to understand how IE is working. So today I want to present a transparent way to insert IE in education. Starting from the question, is it possible to improve learning outcomes in terms of knowledge and skills through the use of innovative technological courses? And it's possible to insert the IE in how can I say, in a way that you cannot feel that the IE is inside the learning in the learning path. And after that, it's possible to automatically create a group. So inside this learning path, we can think about activities, group activities, and it's possible to create groups that can optimize the learning activities. But yes, we work a lot in these fields. And for example, we identify the Big Five as a questionnaire that can create a model of the personality of the people. And using 5 dimensions of the personality that this questionnaire identify, it's possible to create a model of the person, and using an intelligent algorithm, for example, the K-means algorithm, it's possible to create clusters of people. Those clusters are the base for the IE to create the individualization inside the learning path. For example, I will go in the concrete. I organized 2 experiences in my learning in my courses, and I prepare 2 paths. One, the normal learning path, and a second path with 4 steps. The steps are activities based on digital storytelling and object-based learning that are being treated by 173 person, and sorry, I get data from the students, and getting those activities that are being developed by the AI using their models, I can demonstrate that, for example, using a grid that was already be validated by the research community for the evaluation of critical thinking, it's possible to highlight how the experimental group in this slide, this gruppo sperimentale, without know that in their path there is an AI tutor, they enhance their skills of communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creation, and creativity. But not only the skills, but they enhance their success ratio at the first exam. For example, the experimental groups pass the first the first appel in 87% of the cases, and the control group only the 72. So this is only a first step. It's a first pilot, but analyzing all the correlation from the skills, the enhancement of the transversal skills, and the results of the final exam, is possible to highlight how the AI. Yeah, I'm finished. I finished too fast. So we find that there is a high correlation between the communication and the critical thinking and the results of the final exams. In particular, we demonstrated that the AI can stimulate in homogeneous group the skills of critical thinking and communication, and the heterogeneous groups can enhance the collaboration skills. The creativity is really difficult to quantify. There are a lot of tests, for example, the different use of a word and different tests to get the divergent thinking, but it's not easy to merge all this information in one model of creativity. So this is the dimension that gives us more problem. But for sure, it's possible to insert the AI inside what we already have. So we don't need to develop some new platform, some new methodology. The AI can be inserted inside our platform, and it's possible to hide the AI to the students and get these results, for example, or other different results. For example, the medical result that I highlighted in the first part of the presentation. So I hope that in the next future, in all the school, we can have some kind of diagnostic tools to help students in the first years of their learning path. So thank you. I think the time is finished.
Thank you, Carlo. Thank you so much. There are already comments. So we have around 20 minutes for questions, and we already have some. So I'll go through them and try to recap what we said. There are many different inspiring points, and as you might have seen, there's a very interesting thread among all the contributions today. So the first question is for Deborah. And it says how digital and AI technologies can support improvement in education and development of professional skills among people with health disabilities, including persons with mental disabilities. This is Shumuel, who is asking this question to Deborah, or any of you, but I think Deborah is there.
Yes, thank you,
There
Shmuel,
he
for
is,
directing
there
your
he is.
question to me. I do believe that everybody touched on this opportunity, so I don't want to take up
No,
all of the answer time. I know as an instructor using frequently asynchronous methods of teaching with online courses, etc., that my students, when we are in a one-on-one conversation, will confess to me, you know, I can't really attend normal graduate school face-to-face. I have high anxiety, or there might be any number of other challenges that I suffer. So we've already experienced as distance learning educators, we've already know the power of taking out some of the traditional tenets of what it means to be in an educational setting. I think that AI can power that, and actually there were many of you who can talk more elegantly about than me about this, but I think the personalization is really important. Something that especially occurs with people on the autism spectrum is that they often need to do or hear or perform things over and over again. And that kind of repetitive energy is something that doesn't bother the AI tutor at all. They can repeat and repeat and repeat as long as someone needs it to be repeated. And I think we can even talk about language learners in this same way of being able to slow things down or reposition. I think that Emily might have something to say about prompt engineering. I know one of the things that I do when I'm engineering a prompt into AI is I try to really give a sense of who I am and what my needs are, and who my audience is and what my audience needs are. So for example, I'm a new teacher in 5th grade, and I have a group of students who are, XYZ, maybe language learners, maybe whatever. And then I say, please help me come up with a way of explaining, I'm just going to say, what is artificial intelligence? And, that I'm not saying it comes out perfectly, but I do think that those kinds of directives are going to be much more built into how we as educators think about presenting our content. I'd like to hand it off to someone else.
Thank you, Deb. I don't know if Emily wants to add something related to this aspect.
I just wanted to say that was wonderful prompt engineering. That sample prompt there, we call it identity assignation. So you have wonderful instincts on that. That's all I'll say on that one.
Thank you, Emily. There's a question for Maria Rosaria. Now, what, according to you, need to be a role of authorities in effective development of robotic technologies for inclusive heritage education? Do you have any idea? Good question.
Very important challenge. Yeah. I think that both Deborah and Emily gave us two important words on this. The first one is the terms about awareness. So the idea to support awareness and regarding artificial intelligence within all educational contexts is so much important. Underline the great and the possibility that can have artificial intelligence for education from an inclusive perspective, and also the adaptability to learning needs. So from this point of view, we know for sure that authorities have to safeguard learners in general, but the main challenge is also communicate heritage, educate to heritage, and this balance between adaptability and awareness and fruition and education in general can be so much important. But I think that all decisions can be very generalized to educational perspectives. And this panel, I think, the main theme of this panel was to think about new possibilities in this direction.
In fact, there's there are different questions that are mainly focused on one main point that I think can be, answered by different of you. So this idea of replacing human beings with robots or, avatars or other kind of digital subjects. Do you think this is this scary? Is this something that we consider as sci-fi, or is instead something that we can control? I see Emily is please, Emily. You
Sorry, I
can
have like
come
a
first
visceral
and then the
reaction
other.
to this.
Yeah.
I would definitely hesitate to always to use phrases like replacing. I think that David gave amazing examples of how we're sort of just amplifying our power. We're amplifying our ability to reach more people, to tailor to people's needs a little bit better. And I think that there are definitely ways that we are experiencing growing pains, but I think that especially, and I did see, so I'll like sort of fold this in to one of the questions that I had gotten about sort of university policy. I think we can actually look towards academia and how we're sort of trying to guide people to use AI in academia as a tool, as a companion, as an amplifier, as someone to either help, as a tool to either help amplify or to reach across a broader spectrum or to tailor down. I think that there are ways that we can work with AI without sort of this fear-mongery, it's going to take over, it's going to replace us kind of language. I know it's like very enticing to talk in those terms a lot of the time. But personally, I do think that there's a lot of room for companion work with AI so that we can have it help us help other people, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely.
I'll always defend it. I'll always defend it.
Because we need to, to have a certain balance. That's true. And I want to thank Shmuel Yerushalmi, who's putting out different questions, and I thank you so much for being so active. There's another question from Eliana Maria Torre. She's asking, do you believe, but I think this came out of your presentations, but maybe either, of course, Deb or David can answer this question. Do you think AI can have an impact on soft skills? And can you predict how? Moreover, how do you think the evaluation processes will evolve to assess these skills effectively using AI, of course?
Yeah, I mean, I can start with that one.
Yeah, please.
Sure. Yeah, no, I do think, yes. I mean, I think if you saw the very brief retail example I showed you was really a customer service, that was a soft skill in terms of customer service skills more than anything else. And I think, my vision of being able to teach those kinds of skills is to put people in environments where they can make decisions and try things and experiment and have, coaching, guidance, and feedback, and do that in a way where, ideally there's freedom to experiment and you can make mistakes. And, in the retail example, you'd make mistakes and you don't alienate a real customer. There might be, there are other skill, obviously any other skill would have its own specifics. So I think that's, there's absolutely a lot of room for work in soft skill areas, and to be able to take advantage of I talked a lot about putting people in a realistic environment in the segment that I did, and that's obviously a key part of it. But then the other thing that I didn't really mention, but should, is that we also then as educational designers can control the environment. So for example, we can put people in situations that they will experience and learn from that maybe they wouldn't encounter in real life, right? So in that way, it's the way in which it sort of gives you something that real life doesn't, right? Like, one skill I talk about sometimes is project management and people management, especially people management, okay, in the workplace. Part of my job is managing people. I'm sure I've made mistakes. I'm sure I've only been told about a small percentage of those mistakes because nobody's going to tell you, right? Because that's what happens in real life. They're not going to tell you. Who's going to tell you? Maybe 10 years later, somebody who's now a really good friend is going to say, hey, 10 years ago, maybe you shouldn't have said that. And sometimes that happens, but generally that doesn't happen. And so we can put people in a situation where they're in some sort of realistic simulation, realistic environment, and get real feedback and force them to encounter difficult situations, right? You might have, what if there's something really complicated that, you get to practice on it before it really matters. And so all of those things there are things that we can do. They're not easy. There's a whole lot of work to do it. There's technical implementation, some of which we can do today, some of which we can't. But I think from the educational design perspective, moving away from teaching content and moving toward creating different kinds of experiences, and soft skills are absolutely, well within that, and a critical part of what we can do to be able to teach critical thinking skills and decision making and all the kind of skills that we want people to have to to really live in today's world and live in any world, and be able to being able to live the life that we want everybody to have.
Yeah, and in fact, you touched a very critical point. Sorry for the play on words, but it is true. And there's Beregui Aissa, who's saying exactly this mentioning this point, because she's asking about rethinking digital assessment as a consequence of using robots, of using AI and generative AI. Any suggestions for new ways of digital assessment? Don't know who wants to take this one.
I'm happy to chime in
and
please. Just say that I do think that AI and the sort of really widespread adoption of it, especially by students, is definitely changing the way in which instructors and professors and teachers interact with and assess the students. And I think that although sometimes it's very difficult on a grand scale, let's say if you have 30 students, if you are teaching a MOOC or something like that, I think it also helps to be able to go through chat logs. So that's something that we do. Again, somebody touched on university policy, something that we also are encouraging and in some cases requiring is, okay, if you use AI, we would like to see the chat logs. We would like to see what you're asking it, how you're generating these prompts, because there's so much that you can tell about someone's grasp of a topic by how they decide to seek help, in the same way that if you're a tutor, you can understand someone's grasp on a topic by the questions that they ask you and by what they know they need and what they might not know that they need. So I think that there are interesting sort of workarounds between what we now need to actually be assessing and then what also we have available to us from the fact that we get to peek into students' minds now. We get to see how they think, we get to see what they want to know. And I think that's very powerful in assessment, even if there again are going to be growing pains about how we do that at a scale.
Absolutely. And this is, really subject for a different, afternoon, I think, and more than that, different session. Another session, there are two questions that are more or less, in the same direction. The first is from Mara Valente, and she's asking how to use AI, and do you think is it possible to use AI for early childhood education, especially in the perspective of sustainability? And the other is from Luca Contardi, who's wondering, taking into consideration the quick and the fast changes in the AI sector, in the digital sector, what are your thoughts in terms of sustainability for these kind of tools, especially in informal education fields? I don't know who wants to give a feedback. Maybe on early childhood education, Deb or Maria Rosaria, who wants to go first?
I was thinking also on Emily's quotes, last quotes. In all the learning experiences where collaboration between learners is so much important, also where educators are minus in number from the learners, artificial intelligence can really support educators from the evaluation activities, from the assessment activities, and also for all the activities that want educator in the activity to see collaboration, to have a tick about how this collaborative engagement can be is carrying out, and through IEs, we have the possibility to take notes of a lot of number of learners and interaction in a very quick time. So in this direction, I think it should be very important. So for also psychological point of view and psychopathological perspective could be important in order to think about, obviously, learning solution in from a very personalized view. So
thank you, Maria Rosaria. I don't know if Deb wants to add something on early childhood education, maybe.
I think that I'm not an early childhood expert. However, I do notice that I live around and near in New York City, and there are a lot of kids who are using technological devices, iPads, whatever, and most of it is just for entertainment possibilities. And I don't want to deny them that freedom to do that. But I think their relationship to technology, these born digital people, is very different from what we experience, those of us who didn't grow up with digital phones, and for example. And I think that sometimes we bring our older, more removed perspective of technology when we think about what and how the students, the little ones, are using the technology. And I think that, I think actually Carlo was talking about this, and maybe you have a more interesting thing to say about it. But what I was going to offer is that if these devices that were handed to little ones, even pre-verbal students, had a way of interacting that would track some of the qualities that Carlo was talking about, that it could actually be an interesting documentation, maybe just for the parent. I'm not saying it's going to go to some official place, but to say, oh, they're not hearing this at a certain volume, or they're not responding to this in a way that I would expect. And I think early detection, it's one of the most challenging things, and it's not always right. But you have an opportunity here to give one other set of data about what is going on with your child and where that could be supported if it's a positive aspect and where it can be redirected. Anyway, that's my observation.
That's true. I absolutely agree with you. I don't know if Carlo wants to add something to that, and then we will take a couple of other questions. And Carlo?
No, I will. I want to say something about what Luca says about the changes and the quick changes, obsolescence of the experience. I think that there is a big problem because many robot company try to study ways to reuse part of these robots, and they can reuse this robot for different activities, but it's not the real problem. It's a fact. Over the years, the possibility of recycling these robots will be less than now. And the real problem is the huge quantity of money, of resources that we need to keep alive the AI. For example, ChatGPT have a model that needs something about $700,000 per day. So you can make the proportion for a year, and this is only one large model. And now we have the Model 3, the Model 4 of ChatGPT. We have the Gemini from Google. We will have soon other models from other companies. So how can we sustain all these models? They need servers. They need fresh air. They need electricity. They need a lot of resources, and all these resources are a problem for the earth. So we must find a way to have the IE for sure. We need it, but we cannot give the IE in change of our planet. So we need to find some balance. And for sure, this question is really, really important in this moment, because now we have to take a decision. We have to choose where we will go in the future. So thank you, Luca. It's a really good question.
This is very, very important. You're right. I want to thank Bergui Aissa from Algeria. And because you know, of course, I forgot to tell you her affiliation. But there's another very interesting question that I want to ask you all. The whole panel. How can we get support from AI to work on research paper writing? This is a big issue. So AI, is it possible that AI support research paper writing, essay writing? You know, this is a big issue we have been discussing in our universities for some time now. So to the panelists.
For sure, AI is an instrument.
Carlo, you start, and then the other.
So AI can search faster than us. AI can collect all research articles faster than us, but it's not possible to write an article only using the AI. Someone tried, and unfortunately it works, because I don't want to make the name of the journal, but a journal publish an article totally written by the AI, and they, after that, in the presentation, they say, this is a joke, we want to present this funny case. But it's evident that we must know if the AI can write and can write critical. So if the AI have critical thinking ability, and after that, the AI can only create something from what they already had. If you ask to ChatGPT, can you write something new? The answer is no. I can only make something based on what I already see before. So yes, the AI can be an instrument to enhance your ability to get resources, to get article, to make them connected, but you have to write the article, you have to get the idea. So remember that the AI must be only an instrument, cannot become the leader of a research team.
Yes, of course. Any ideas, David, Deb, Maria Rosaria, everyone? Because this is a major problem.
I mean, I'm happy to jump in if no one else has anything else to say, but I think it can be a wonderful component of sort of your academic tool belt. Just as Carlos said, I think if you're using it as a component of your research, we all know that it's possible for ChatGPT to hallucinate, as they say, to come up with inaccurate information. And actually I have something pulled up on my screen, which is basically a flow chart. It's a very sassy flow chart put out by the university that I study and work at. And it says, how do I know if I can use ChatGPT in my academic writing? Does it matter if the output is true? If the answer is yes, then you have some problems. And then you have to say, do you have the expertise to verify that the output is accurate? So it's one of these things where you cannot rely on ChatGPT to lead you to the right place, but you can have it support you from behind as you are on your way. And I think that some of the great elements are being able to ask for references that you can then look into. What are some sources that I could look to find out about XYZ? You could point out things that you might notice. This reminds me of this, seems connected to this. What kind of connections do you see there? You could ask about pointing towards other research papers that may be online that you could then go look at. And some students like to use it as well for formatting ideas. So here are the key components of my argument. How might I best sort of order these so that I could really make my point? And even for some people who are less confident with English skills or whatever, language that they're using. Hey, this is what I'm trying to explain. I need it, to actually, I'm searching for certain words. I'm searching for certain phrases. Can you help me with that? So I think as long as you are sort of the engine, it's fine to add like a fancy dashboard and give a little something and I get some help. But really you need to be in the driver's seat. You need to be pushing things along. But I think that it's fantastic. It's a fantastic tool for people to be able to express themselves, be able to confidently, move in different directions and to be aware of things that you may not have any other way to be aware of. So I think there's a lot of positive.
Absolutely. And we need to teach how to use this kind of opportunities. These are only opportunities and the result of development of research. Thank you so much. I don't know if Carlos is always there. I can share my own screen to tell you something before leaving you, which is very, very important. So first of all, thanks a lot to our panelists, to Deborah Sedawis, Emily Kate Janatowski, Maria Rosaria Re, David Guran, and Carlo De Medio, who were really brilliant and inspiring. I want to tell you and to remind you that we have a wonderful and very interesting conference to come. I have something here. I don't know why. Let's see. Should be from here. The annual conference to come very soon in June, and it will take place in Graz, in Austria. So please pay attention to the deadlines and to the possibility to be part of our Eden family. This is very important. We are going to have a research workshop in the fall in Timișoara. Wonderful place to be from many different point of views, especially for art, culture, and it was the European city of culture. And we are going to be hosted by the Politecnica Timișoara University. And we are part of the European Digital Education Hub. And so please be part of that. We have different opportunities to work on micro-credentials, on online learning or international collaboration. Please take the chance to be with us in the European Digital Education Hub. We are going to have more meetings within the Open Education Week. We are going to have a meeting with Dennis Whitelock as moderator, Agnes Kukuluska-Yulm, Kulak Charitonos, Saraswati Dawadi, and Tom Power in the next few days. And I think that's it. I thank you so much for being with us. We had such a wonderful time together. We had many participants with us, and so I think it was a very successful afternoon. Thank you again. I'll see you soon with us, and keep on following us, especially our social media with Eden Digital Learning Europe. Thank you all.